Kenyans, my fellow Kenyans. Now, I'm sure that many Kenyans have always dreamt of finding a job abroad, experiencing that life, and going to find opportunities in other countries. However, when said opportunities are being pushed by government, you must be highly suspicious. My name is Sofia and I'm here to talk about it today, why you should be on high alert about the issue of human trafficking, how it's affected Kenyans, and how it's going to continue to affect Kenyans, especially with the kind of framework that the government is doing it in. I mean, there are so many things that are really pissing us off as Kenyans. I mean, the list grows longer and longer every single day, by the hour, by the day. But something that has been in the headlines that has really been irritating me to my core is this issue about the CS of Labor pushing this Kenyan policy apparently of modern day slavery. So obviously Kenyans have been completely outraged, everywhere, on TikTok, on Twitter, everyone is completely appalled. Why is this a strategy that the government is implementing, knowing full well the dangers of Kenyans having to literally go to these countries that have really poor human rights record strategy for a government, unless maybe they have no other ideas, perhaps. They're just now we're at the last... Now we're at our wits' end. We have no idea how to create jobs. We have no idea how to create jobs for Kenyans. Yeah. So it's whatever, man. At this point in time, we'll do what we have to do to show that we're actually doing something to create job employment. That's not really creating job employment really for the youth. But I wanted to come here to discuss, because this issue has been coming up over and over again, really educate some Kenyans who still might believe that we're, overreacting on what human trafficking is, and really refer to the law and Kenya's obligations as a state on the issue of human trafficking. So human trafficking is a transnational and global phenomenon, often referred to as modern day slavery. And human trafficking is understood to refer to the process through which individuals are placed or maintained in an exploitative situation for economic gain. It is a prevalent, pervasive, and widespread form of human rights abuse perpetrated mostly against women and children, although we know men and boys also are victims of trafficking. Now, one of the things that we must remember is that as a country we have international obligations, right? Because we sign treaties and we sign conventions and we sign protocols, and we bind ourselves to those protocols that we've signed at the international level, at the regional level. And one instrument that is very, very important, actually two. So one of those conventions is the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime. Now, human trafficking is considered one of the most lucrative transnational crimes. And under this convention, there's a protocol, others known as the Palermo Protocol. It has a very long name. It's called the Protocol to Prevent, Suppress, and Punish Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children. And the especially women and children part is because we know statistically that most of the victims of trafficking are women and children. So hence the emphasis to be able to acknowledge that vulnerability, but that doesn't in any way exclude the trafficking of boys and men. And so we signed this convention as a country. We signed the protocol and ratified it as a country. By the way, because you'll have countries like the United States of America claiming that they are party to the protocol when they've only signed but not ratified the protocol, which has no bearing in international law, because for it to be binding, you have to sign it and then you have to ratify it. We'll come back to class another day to explain what the process of ratification is. But basically, it's you've gone back to your home country and you've undertaken certain domestic processes to be able to fully commit to the provisions of this law, to the provisions of this convention. So we've signed those international treaties, protocols that are of direct relevance, but there are others that also speak to this issue. But also within our own country, we have our Counter Trafficking in Persons Act, right? So the Counter Trafficking in Persons Act has the same, literally we copy pasted the definition of trafficking from the international level to the domestic level. We just did a copy and paste. There was a long drawn out process of actually coming up with the language of defining what trafficking is. Like the definition of human trafficking, it took long negotiations between countries. So if you're in law med, you can go to like the Travaux Perpetual. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but essentially the preparatory documents of treaties it's like minutes that I've taken during treaty negotiations. So you can see the up and down, right? The back and forth of that countries were negotiating the language, literally just how to define it. And then not only how to define it, but also how to segregate criminal responsibility for all the actors within the human trafficking chain. Now you see, the human trafficking as a crime was designed to be able to capture the entire net of culpable perpetrators, right? Because you acknowledge that it's a crime that has different phases. What we usually talk about, the act, the means, the purpose, right? That's how you kind of break down the very big definition. The act, the means, and the purpose. The act, for example, recruitment, transportation, transferring or harboring or receipt of a victim. The means through coercion, through fraud, right, through abuse of power, false promises and things like that, through deceit, deception, right? That's how you actually get a trafficking victim's consent, through those means, and the purpose of which is exploitation. Now, exploitation can be sexual exploitation, can be labor exploitation, can be exploitation in the form of removal of body organs. You know, there's a whole market for body organs. So there's different forms of exploitation. In our law, funny enough, we had trafficking for the adoption for the purposes of trafficking as a very unique crime in our Counter Trafficking in Persons Act. So when it comes to children, you only need two elements, the act and the purpose. You don't need the means, because we assume that a child cannot give consent. But for an adult, you have to prove all those elements. But essentially what we're saying is that everyone involved in any part of the chain, as long as in the end there was trafficking, in the end there was exploitation, then everybody involved in the trafficking scheme is criminally culpable, right? So the recruitment agency that recruited, right, in Kenya, the exploitation is happening in Saudi Arabia, the exploitation is happening in Qatar. That doesn't mean that you're off the hook, as Derek. I don't know. I don't know nothing. I have no clue. I'm doing a legitimate business. You can't do anything, because the also responsibility mens rea, right? Because a lot of these employment agencies are run by government people, or people who used to be in government. And that's why you'll hear that there are raids of these employment agencies that are taking people to exploitative circumstances abroad, but nothing happens to them, or you'll hear a few headlines and then after that nothing happens to them. Because there is involvement of state officials, of government officials, and you'll find that a lot of the times in these trafficking scenarios, you'll find some people in immigration who work for government, for example, being able to get travel documents for the people who are traveling abroad in, dubious ways, for instance. So they kind of know what all this is about, So if you're involved in the recruitment, in the harboring, in the transportation, there's case law even in Kenya, where the taxi driver who took the victims to the airport also was an accused person in a case, right? And then you have the people who do the exploitation or commit the exploitation in the end. So just because they were not involved in this part doesn't mean that. You understand what I'm saying? So all these, the crime essentially wants to encompass, as I've said, all of these elements. Because if you take one element, yes, for example, that there's a rape, right, in sexual exploitation. Yeah, there's rape or there's defilement of a child in the end, or a woman has been forced into prostitution or that kind of thing. That doesn't encompass everybody who really has played a role in one way or another, right, to create an environment, to facilitate, whatever the case may be, is that we want to be able to show the gravitas of this crime. And I'm telling you, this is one of the most lucrative criminal activity in the world. Like, you have guns, you have drugs, and then you have human trafficking. That's how lucrative this thing is. People make bank. People make bank. It is a lot. Did you see there was a news item? In fact, Kenyans were being brought back, or at least the PS for Foreign Affairs said that was going to facilitate them coming back, that they were trafficked into Myanmar. I think they're at the border of Myanmar and Thailand, if I'm not wrong. And again, same thing. They were looking for a job. They went there. Their passports were taken from them. Then you get into this situation of debt suffrage. Debt bondage rather. So now all of this is facilitated for you, with the understanding that you will pay for that debt. But ideally, you're being held as a slave. You will never pay for that debt. So it's so funny that the government of Kenya, Kwanza, what's his name? Alfred Mutua was talking about that government will do soft loans. I said, government is going to do what? And then not only that, they are actively trying to recruit people. Not trying, actually recruiting people, right? And then, I'm very happy that guys went to Salimia Pastor Mwai on Sunday, because the ridiculousness of having a recruitment drive in a church, a government recruitment drive in a government human trafficking, modern day slavery recruitment drive. I can't even talk. The words that even struggling to come out of my mouth. That's how ridiculous this is. So apart from the, raising eyebrows, 20 million, 120 million donations to the church, this same church is doing recruitment drives for very dubious recruitment processes. And even the ones that have already taken place that Alfred Mutua has been talking about, people have a lot of bad things to say, to be honest about that. Now, the thing that worries me is, first of all, I personally have not heard from the advisory committee. Now, there is a committee that is established under the Counter Trafficking in Persons Act. And that committee constitutes different government agencies that in one way or another should be involved in issues concerning migration, immigration, and things like that. Anything to do with trafficking. So from law enforcement, from the director of public prosecutions, you need to come up with mutual legal assistance agreements with countries. I have not seen anything like that. I've not heard the committee saying anything, and I've not seen even attempts to even lie to us. We're going to make sure that Kenyans are protected. Even mutual legal assistance agreements, with other countries where Kenyans are being taken, to tell us that there are measures with the foreign offices there to make sure that every Kenyan is registered, that there's a mechanism to follow up on Kenyans, or that there's a redress mechanism. All this Mutua guy is telling us that kwanza nyinyi msikuwe activists. Can you, first of all, guy mwadhani. I don't know. I've said I'm shocked. I don't know if the most shocking thing about all of this is that model house slavery situation in Mombasa. Do you see that? At your model house, so that people can learn how to be slaves in Saudi Arabia. Like, seriously. That's how I interpret it. They're saying that this is how that they can teach people how to, be housekeepers in Saudi Arabia. But I'm just like, you think the issue is that people don't know how to clean homes? Mtu anakuja hayapewi chakula. You can't sleep. You're not even given health care. Like, you're not allowed to contact your family. You're in debt bondage. You're not allowed to leave. You're not allowed to talk to anyone. You're not allowed to leave the house in which you work. Like slavery-like conditions. And that's why we're very categorical when we say this is a modern day form of slavery. And as a country, as Kenya, we are a source country, we are a transit country, and we're a destination country for trafficking. What does that mean? That people are trafficked from here to other countries. People are trafficked through here because of our porous borders and corruption in our different government agencies. But then also, this is a destination for people who are trafficked into Kenya. And if I look at how Kenya has performed with its state obligations with those three lens in mind, performing Kenya as a source country, Kenya performing as a transit country and a destination country, I mean, come on now. We can't even properly assist the trafficking victims that are being trafficked into Kenya and being exploited here. So how are you going to ensure that you've taken care of your citizens who go abroad and are exploited abroad? I feel like it's so irresponsible of the government. Like so irresponsible. Like they just want to get rid of the Gen Zs. And then we're going to find them jobs abroad. Instead of creating jobs here, who said they want to go abroad? You know, and let alone go abroad when you are a graduate, when you have experience. People are jobless and desperate, and that's why you're seeing drones and drones of people at those recruitment drives. But I mean, we're going to have to wait and see. But personally, I am very, very worried about the capacity of the government. Actually, not even the capacity. They're not even they're unwilling. They are completely unwilling, completely choosing to be aloof of these issues. And you know, the thing is, I want to reiterate, Derek. I want to reiterate that Kenya has obligations ya kujitakia. Anybody asks you to sign nothing. Anybody asks you to go to Geneva and sign an international instrument. Anybody asks you to go to the AU and sign in Addis and sign okay, actually even anybody asks you to even vie for AUC chair. But you see, the states, they decide what they're going to do, right? And the Vienna Law of Conventions is very clear. Once you sign, you have an intention to be bound. So these are not requests that we are asking. So when we talk about human rights-based approaches, maybe we'll have another lesson another day where we actually go, you know, in detail in some of these like human rights frameworks. Is that we're not crazy. These are obligations that the government has imposed upon itself by signing these international treaties, signing these international protocols that create clear obligations on them as a state. Number two, you've passed your own law in your own parliament. You have established a committee that operates like a board that is funded. In fact, I need to go and see Auditor General's reports because I want to see how much of their money actually goes directly into helping victims. Like, there's so much that needs to be said about this, and I feel like there needs to be a lot more public pushback. Otherwise, we're going to have the same story time and time again of Kenyans coming back, abused, brutalized in body bags, traumatized, all because their vulnerability was taken for granted. Their desperation for a job was taken for granted. And for the fact that the government is an enabler or intends to be an enabler in this is very, very annoying to me personally. So that's why I was just like, excuse me, let me come and talk to Gen Z. Niwaambia, you're being screwed. And you need to fight for your rights. You know, there's a case that I did where these women were trafficked into Kenya from Nepal and India for sexual exploitation. And they were sexually exploited for about 4 months. And they were rescued by the cops. In fact, the cops made a huge spectacle about it, eh? Hey, look, see what we are doing. See all the good work. We're nabbing the bad guys. You know what I mean? And then they wrote to my clients who said, they wrote to my clients and said, please, could you assist us just house these ladies for about 7 days. 7 days became 21 days. 21 days became months. This is an obligation of yours. as a state. But you will abdicate that responsibility to NGOs, right? So you can't even perform. Can you imagine? Which Kenyans are going to be saved by this Kenyan government? It's a tall order. And I literally had to take them to court. Take the Kenyan government to court for those ladies to be safely repatriated back to their home countries. Like these are serious issues. These are very serious issues. And I fear that this government is not looking at these women, not looking at these men who are so desperate to get jobs as human beings who need protection. In fact, they are entitled to protection as per the tenets of the Constitution. I've gone on a very long rant. A very long rant. And so I'm wondering how we can come together, what we can do, what we should do. And I wanted to hear from, my favorite Gen Z. Don't tell my niece. Don't tell my nieces and nephews. I've chosen you over them.
Basically, after listening to all this, because I think there is a lot of information that you have given that we young people don't know. And the fact that our education system to me is already a sham. It's a very fake system, whereby we implemented a colonial system that I should go to campus, I should go to school for 8 years, go to high school for 4 years, go to campus for 4 years, graduate, get that degree, look for a job. And that mindset is what is messing us up. Let's say if we were taught hand skills, skills that I can do with my hands, I'm very sure we could have less number of unemployment in this country. And that is why you see the government is really trying to shape out people, because there are so many graduates, but there are no jobs. But also at the same time, I believe that the government is in a position to create employment for these people without taking them outside.
Right.
And the fact that the government is taking people outside without providing even the families with a clear, detailed information that your child is going to Qatar to do this and this, in case this happens, because there are cases that we cannot slide under the table. The people whom we have lost in the Gulf, the women who have gone there never to come back. Some families have not been able to bury their loved ones till date. And the government is trying to shape people without giving a clear path that if this happens, there is this MOU of understanding between us and their government that this is what we'll receive as a compensation. But also we are not here to kill people. We cannot advocate for people to be taken outside to be murdered. There is a lot of work that can be done. I think it's high time the government audit the education system to reduce the number of graduates. Because when I'm out of school, what I have in mind is to get a white-collar job. I cannot
reduce the number of graduates. That's crazy.
You cannot graduate and say you're going to become a farmer. Who has that mindset among young people? Someone has his horror degree. He's like, no, me, I want to get a work in office. And that's why you see.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Because that's what these guys are trying to do. Remember, we need to come back to the conversation around the agricultural bills.
Yeah.
Because there's that agricultural professionals registration bill, something like that was proposing that you can only be a farmer if you've gone
to school
and attained some sort of formal education, whether it's a certificate, a degree, a diploma.
Yeah.
I think if I remember correctly. So you're saying that less emphasis on universities, more emphasis on skills.
Yeah. Because I sat down in the...
And you can't do that. You can't do both?
Okay, someone can do both.
Or artisanal schools. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a university, but it could be a school where you learn certain skills.
Or rather, implement a scenario whereby before, if I'm to transit to campus to do whatever I want to do, let's say after school, kids are home for around 6 months before joining campus. What are they doing? Sitting with their mothers at home, breastfeeding and playing games. I think that 6 months the government should be coming up with something like, you will enroll in this artisan school for 6 months, do a 6 month short course. I was in Mombasa and I met an old man crafting old doors. You see the dose you see in the banks?
Yeah.
And he tells me, Derek, I sell this dose to Italians at 250,000.
Like those Lamu doors.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
And he says there is no young person who has ever approached him to learn that skill. But imagine you are selling one door at 300,000. And all the doors that someone has thrown. Meaning you can recycle. The question I actually ask myself, what is it with China that young people in China are inventing things, yet in Africa, CBCs here in Kenya, we're being told carry chicken to school. Which kind of learning is this? There's a lot that you can learn as young people instead of taking this house job that you're taking me to do abroad. I can do that house job in Kenya. You don't have to ship me abroad.
Indeed.
The government, what she should do for me is just create employment.
Yeah.
Because
and create conducive
working
environments.
You see,
even for businesses. Yeah.
We have chased investors away.
Yeah.
We are signing deals that benefit us, yet we are already rich. What about the common mwananchi? And then there is where you want to try and ship a young person out. So for me, I think it's high time young people, as much as we are becoming more vocal on the type of crazy leaders we have in this country, is also at a high time that anything that happens that is affecting a young person, we come out, do a lot of education. I think it's time for civic education to be given more priority than a chemistry class of mixing chemicals.
Agreed.
Because why am I mixing chemicals? For instance, I mixed chemicals in high school, so they're not helping me in life right now in making money anywhere. If someone wants to become a chemical engineer, fine, can go do that. But for me, I think it's high time through schools, high schools, primary schools, civic education to start be given at a very young age. When you're 18, you need to take a vote. You need to register as a voter. You need to go and vote. The government is bringing up this thing. Let's scrutinize it out, because for me personally, there is a lot of information that I do not know about whatever the government is trying to do. So to people is like tumetengenezewa kazi, but yenyewe tukae chini tuangalie kazi zenyewe, are they healthy for us? Or am I just going to Qatar, to Dubai, to Arabia, to suffer and come back in a casket? That's what I think.
Yeah. But I mean, let me tell you, desperate times, eh? Like for the people who, they don't have an alternative.
Yeah.
They don't have an alternative. They've been looking for jobs. You know, they've been looking for opportunities, they're applying for jobs, and they're not getting jobs. So it's not for lack of trying, and it's not like Kenyans are not hardworking. So really, the question is, I think what I'm getting from you is sort of short, medium, and long-term strategies in order to curb human trafficking, or rather to reduce it. I mean, I don't know if you can curb it completely, but perhaps reduce it.
Because if I'm taught a hand-skilled job, I go to campus. Do you know, in campus I can make money. I come to campus, I'm a carpenter. Already have that mindset. Oh, so I can make money out of carpentry. Or I come to campus, I already have a skill in masonry. Here in Kilifi, I can look for agencies that are building houses. I'm in class, but at the same time, because I'm telling you for a fact, here inside this school, we only go for classes 3 times a week. What's that? The rest of 4 days, what are you doing as a young person? Sitting in your house, Netflixing and chilling. And then you graduate, throw the cap up, you go, you're gonna be shipped outside there. So the government should reduce this. Like the government should just audit itself. I think our problem in Kenya is the government, not the people.
100%.
Because people are hardworking. Someone wakes up in the morning, goes to an office to look for a job. Every day someone is on the road looking for a job. But now the problem is the government, the people whom we took to office, because I think the only way the government can help me is not giving me money, but it's creating an environment for me to make that money. But now they have brought their shisha, ikopali. They have brought their affordable housing. Who will buy those houses if you're taking us abroad? Who will live in those houses? So I think the government should audit the kind of projects it has for its people and seek ways to empower its own citizens. Because it's really funny that we are exporting people, yet those governments are not exporting people to us. What are they doing different that we are not
It's a
doing?
lot of brain drain.
So I think the government is the problem.
100%. 100%.
And if these opposition people who have formed a certain coalition, if they are not going
We don't have opposition anymore.
if they are going to
We are the opposition.
we are the opposition, and then we have people call themselves the opposition, the Kalonzo's team. If they don't audit their mind and think another way around, they're just going to be like the same president.
Yeah.
So to me, literally, young people or the Gen Z together, the millennial, like literally every Kenyan should sit down. Long time ago, people used to see politics as something for men and very few women. But right now, people should know that election, politics, governance, leadership really matters in your life. You elect a wrong leader, you suffer for 5 years.
You suffer for decades.
You elect, yeah, actually, because if I get into office for the first time, I might get for the second. With
you
the
suffer
amount
for
of
decades.
For decades. So,
yeah,
elect the right leader, enjoy the fruits, and that leader, especially the one on top, because you can have a good leader down here, and the top is rotten. No matter how good he is, he cannot fight an entire system. So, to change Kenya is going to begin with us.
Yeah.
And we have to be ready to pay that price. It's painful, but that's what we're gonna do. We are men
and women.
Yeah.
My name is Sofia Rajab.
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes.
My name is Mavali.
Behind the scenes, I promise you, there's a Gen Z behind the scene, and it's not AI. I promise you. I promise you. So that's my thoughts for today. I have many more.
Yeah.
But you know what? To be continued.